And we're in quite a lucky position because Flourish has a default London map, so that makes it kind of really easy to use. So again, in terms of data preparation, we go back to the so the files with borough in them have got data by boroughs. So again, we've got a kind of metadata tab. This is the Excel version, and then we've got a file with a row for each borough, and then the different values for each year. And you can see, going back to our do's and do nots for spreadsheets, they've got like 4 header rows, including a blank row, and then various other things. There's kind of information encoded up there in a merged cell and things. So again, this needs a bit of cleaning. There's 2 different tabs. There's the number of people, and then the proportion of employees that earn below the London living wage. And what I've done, and one thing they have got that's quite nice, is they've got both the ONS code for each borough along with the name of the borough. So that makes it easy for making sure you've got the right area when matching across. But if we go to the CSV file, then you can see I've tidied it up a bit. So we've just got one column, which is the figure, so the proportion earning less than the London living wage. I picked the latest year, which I think is 2018 or 19, and I've kept the codes and a name of the borough. So it's a lot simpler CSV. So if we go back to Flourish, we can click on New Visualization again. And if we go down to this section on projection maps, you can see they've got lots of different base maps. The ones for the UK, we've got a constituency, we've got the hex constituencies, which is the one I showed before with the election results, and we've got local authorities, and there's a range for different countries. And also there's an option to upload your own map. So they accept maps in GeoJSON format, which is a kind of particular file format for data. So if you do have, I can show you some places to get ward boundaries, for example, for particular boroughs in that GeoJSON format. But they also have this London one, and I think they've partly made it, you can see it's got underground lines on it. I think they recently added lines as a kind of option, so they're kind of showing that feature off by adding the underground lines. So I've clicked on that one, and this has created our data. So you can see behind we've got all the boroughs if you hover over them, but we've also got the slightly distracting thing of the dots for each station, and then the underground, and they've got some of the other railway lines as well on them. So the first thing we want to do is switch those off. So we just want the boroughs behind. So before we go into our data, we'll switch off these lines. So we've got a points layer here, and we'll just click on disabled. So that removes the points. And then under lines layer, unfortunately, they haven't got enabled, disabled there. But if we set them to width 0, that gets rid of them as well. So points disabled, and then lines width 0. And that just means that they're not shown, which makes it a bit cleaner for our data. So there's our sort of base map. And what we're going to aim to do is change the color of each of these boroughs to represent the proportion of people earning less than the London living wage. So again, if we go to our data tab, you can see last time we just had one sheet called data, I think. In this case, we've got 3 different sheets representing the 3 different things that were visualized when we first went in. So if you look at lines, you've got the shape of all the the shape of all the underground lines included as a GeoJSON object, and then the name of the line, and same with points. The longitude and latitude are used to show where the station's on the map. And you can see again with this on the right hand side, we've got longitude and latitude columns marked there. So that's how they did that. And that's if you did have some data that had points, you need a longitude and a latitude column, and then just specify them here.
David, can I just ask a quick question?
Of course.
Did you choose UK constituencies or UK hex constituencies?
I chose the London brackets boroughs. Let me just find.
So local authorities, yeah?
No, it's under London. So it's
all right. Sorry. Thank you.
So the one we're interested in is region. Now here we've already got the shapes and the names of the of London boroughs. If we uploaded data here, just using this button as we did before, it would overwrite that, and that would mean that we'd lose the shape. So we don't want to do that. What we want to do instead is click at this little arrow at the right of upload data, and where it says upload data file, and then we've got upload data and merge. And what that means is it will be able to connect our data with the existing shapes, and so it won't overwrite it, and we'll still have the shapes to be able to use on the map. So click on upload data and merge, it changes the button, and then when it says upload data and merge as the button, that's when we click on it. And then we're looking for employees earning below LLW boroughs.csv. I've opened that. So now here, because we're merging, we need to make sure that we merge on the right columns. So it looks at the columns in the current sheet and then the columns in the sheet that we've just uploaded. And I have checked this, and we can actually merge on the name. So I'm selecting name in the current sheet, and then it's called borough in the new sheet that we're uploading. Don't worry that they're not in the same order. It's just kind of demoing what the rows are. Now, normally matching on names can be tricky because sometimes, for example, Barking and Dagenham might be Barking ampersand Dagenham. City of London might be London, City of, in which case it might not match. I have checked these and they do match, but there may be some preparation you need to do beforehand to make sure that the names that you've got are the same as the ones that are on the sheet that you're merging. So if I click merge now, and then go back to select columns, and you can see we've got, if you scroll down, we've got a value for every shape. That means, and our map remains the same. So that means we've done it correctly, which is good. And you can see here we've got geometry, which is the, so we now need to select the right columns. So we've got geometry, which is this column here, and you can see it's got the shapes in there. So you know that's the shape of the boroughs. We've got the name of our borough, and then we want our value. So our value is going to be column, which is the percentage earning less than the London living wage. So I just put E in there. And then again, there are other options here that we can use. So if we had different groups of boroughs and they each had a label in here, we could use that and it would draw them slightly differently. There's also this which relates to what can come in the pop-ups. So what we could do actually here is add in column D, and that just means that this code will be shown when we hover over the boroughs. So again, that's kind of very simply what we need to do. And again, it's created this map by default, and it kind of looks quite good. You can see that Redbridge and Sutton are the two highest boroughs in terms of the number of people earning less than the London living wage, and the City of London in the middle with 6.3% is the smallest. So yeah, that's our map. And maybe pause there again, see whether people have got any questions or not got to that point. Okay, I'm taking that as good news. I'd certainly say that again that kind of data preparation step is almost more crucial with the maps, because you really do need to make sure that you've got the right areas and that they match up. And there's lots of things that can trip you up there, like fortunately London boroughs have remained fairly stable, but local authorities in the UK as a whole change every year. Constituencies change, wards change, so you can kind of it can be important to make sure you've got the right year, for example, with the borders that you're using. There's lots of different things that can trip you up when doing the making a map.
Would David, just picking up on that, would Flourish, would you is Flourish proactively updating those maps, would you say?
I don't think they are. And the other thing they don't do, which I'd like them to, is they don't put the codes in. They only have the names, which does mean you have to make sure that the names are matching. If they use the codes, that would be a lot simpler, because it means that you wouldn't have that mismatch of different capitalization or things being the wrong way around. But what is possible is, if you do have trouble with that and you've got a data set that is only in one year and you know that it's different to the year that Flourish have got, you can upload your own version of that.
Thank you.
Yeah, if we've got a bit of time, I might give a demo of that, and with a sort of blank map. Excuse me.
David, is it straightforward to just filter onto one borough, or is it best to just create a borough sort of map?
So in this case, if you wanted to just look at, so I guess just one borough here might not be so useful, but you can, if you're only interested in a few boroughs, you can literally remove rows. Hopefully we can undo this, and they will be removed from the map. So it could be, you want to focus on a particular part of London, and if we have time, I'll give a quick demo of starting from scratch with your own map of just a borough, with because what this doesn't have is any kind of ward breakdowns, for example, of wards within a borough. Let's see if I can undo that.
Change the, I was just noticing when you deleted those, we don't have the outlines of the boroughs with no data, I guess, because we've deleted them. Can you add in for the customization, can you change the color of the borders?
So yeah, as with the chart, everything is kind of customizable. So you can choose not to have any outlines, or you can have outlines. There is also, I think there's a sort of the Ealing's now got no data, and you see it's kind of patterned, and it's possible to under the missing values section, you can change what that looks like.
Okay.
As with the other chart, there's loads of different options in terms of the colors that you use. There's different types of kind of scales. So here we've just got a kind of linear scale where it goes all the way in smooth bands. We could put that into fixed width, so there's only 4 colors now, or excuse me, or what's called quantiles, which is where there's an equal number of boroughs in each, so that you see the boundaries are no longer even, but we've got an equal number of boroughs in each. So that this is now showing the kind of top quarter and bottom quarter. So yeah, there's loads of different options in terms of customizing the map.
And you can add categorical data. So if you had a survey and you could group responses to a single option multiple choice or something like that by borough. I don't know how that fits, but you could presumably add that rather than number values.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if it was something like, yeah, what's the
The top issue for young people or something like that, you could.
Exactly. Yeah, and the one that did, like, political control would be the one that's kind of fairly common for that.
Yeah.
There's various options about what. So if you hover over here, it has a sort of default, the default fields. You see we added the code field, and that's now added in the pop-up. You can change what goes in the pop-up. So you can turn that into a little description. That can also be a sort of panel comes up instead if you want. There's options about the legend. You can switch it on and off, and you can. I think it's slightly nicer if it goes from 0 to 100. And yeah, so loads of different options. And as with the other one, you've got the accessibility control in terms of being able to add a description. You can add a title, and the footer section is where you'd add the source of the data as well. Okay, and then exactly the same as with the other chart in terms of the process of publishing or downloading it, and it works. It can go into stories in the same way as well. Cool. Well, if everyone's happy with that, unless there are happy to answer any questions, but yeah, it may be useful to show starting a map from scratch.
Yeah, I think definitely that. I think that'd be useful for everybody.
Cool. So the first thing you need with a map from scratch is some data. So one place that can be useful, or is a good place to start, I'll put this in the chat. So this is the Office for National Statistics geography site. And this contains hundreds of thousands of different files relating to lots of different things, but they have these boundary files. So these are almost the kind of official files. So for example, here we've got the London Assembly constituencies. You see they've got the kind of changes in boundaries, so where boundaries have changed. And generally there are, for each set of boundaries, there's 4 different files, slightly confusingly, but it basically depends on what kind of resolution they are. So this one is full resolution, and then there's whether it's clipped to the coastline or extent of the realm, so basically whether it includes out to sea or not. Generally, these are extremely detailed, going around individual fields and stuff. For data visualization purposes, it's usually okay to use either the generalized one or the ultra generalized, which is 500 meters kind of space. And they kind of preview them on their own map. See if this actually comes in. No. But the important thing you want to do is download them. So there's a button here that says download. And then the file type that Flourish likes is GeoJSON here. And the thing with the different resolutions is it essentially helps with the file size. So this is quite small, 6 kilobytes. If you pick the full resolution one, then that's got every single change, and that makes the file a lot bigger. So I'm going to change this.
David, I'm very sorry, I missed the name of this map that you are on now. I saw London Assembly constituencies, and there's a number of options for that.
That's right. So this is London Assembly constituencies December
2018.
2018, boundaries ENBUC, and the BUC means the U stands for ultra generalized. So it's the kind of lowest resolution version of this map.
I apologize. I'm always kind of lagging behind. My laptop is not quite good enough to go as quickly as yours. So I'm.
That's okay. And this site is not always the kind of easiest to use. It seems. So it's given me the option to download it here. So I've downloaded that file. The other thing I was going to show you was there's a site that I've created because I'll put this in the chat as well. So because that GeoPortal site isn't always the easiest to use, and the other thing it has is if you wanted wards, it's only got the wards for the whole country, which you then have to kind of then delete the bits that aren't the area that you're looking for. So what I've created is a series of files for every local authority in the country with which then break that area down into a few different types. So we've got the wards, we've got lower super output areas and middle super output areas. So those are different areas used in some statistics. Yeah, so this has got a full list, but if we go for Hackney, you can go to the ward file. And then so it's a map of just the wards within Hackney, and there's the same for all the boroughs. You can even kind of take these and combine them as well. So
sorry to interrupt again, David. So I'm like 5 or 6 steps behind because my browser basically stopped working. It ran out of memory. Is it possible you could maybe put a link to this in the chat for me?
Yep, so that's in the chat, and we'll also make sure these are in. I'll add them to the document or something so they can be sent around to everyone afterwards as well.
Okay.
And it's slightly difficult to download from so this is on GitHub, but if you let me share this kind of exact file.
That's great, thank you.
If you go to raw, you then get the lovely looking guts of the data, and I can use save page as to kind of basically download that file. So that's essentially kind of getting a GeoJSON file, which is what you need as the sort of base for a map. And I'll quickly show you kind of how to create a blank map. It's very similar to what we've done previously. So we go to new visualization. We go down to the maps again, but instead of selecting an existing one, we can select this blank one at the start. So blank, upload your own map. And you can see as promised, it is blank. And then we go to data. And again, we've got regions, points and lines, but they're all empty at the moment, except some dummy data in there. And instead of upload and merge, because we're starting with new boundaries, we can go to upload data, and then let's try and find so here's my GeoJSON file that I got from the GitHub site. You can see this has worked. So we've got all our files, got the name and the code for each of the wards, and then various things is basically like the latitude and longitude of the center of the ward, how big it is, how long it is. So we go back to preview, hopefully. Let's change this. We may need a value, I think, a name. So I'm going to put the geometries in column A, name is column D, and we'll visualize it by J. Working? No. Not sure why that's not working. It could be that Flourish has issues with different types of GeoJSON files sometimes. Let me try the other one that we got. So this is, no, that one's not working either. I'm not sure why that's not working. That's annoying. But yeah, that should be presenting us with a nice map. As I say, live demos always work.
Yes, because you'd have thought it doesn't necessarily need a value to show the
No,
shape.
wait, yeah, it didn't before, did it? Ah, maybe it's this. Yeah, there we
go.
are.
Well done.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Pause and
because
think,
it was showing the whole world rather than the bounds of the areas that we looked at. So yeah, this is coloured by the length of thing. If we tell that that's a numeric one, then that's essentially colouring it by the size of the areas. So the bigger ones are darker. So yeah, there'd obviously then be another step of uploading some data that you had that related to these areas and merging that in again. Cool. I think, yeah, that may have been a bit quick, but hopefully that gave you a kind of overview of how to add your own map.
Can you can you talk us through the next step, or what you would do next if you were then adding points overlaying? So you've already mentioned that you need those points to have a longitudinal and latitudinal value. Would you say you'd do that outside of the Flourish tool? You'd prep that?
Yeah, so you'd need to prep that either by yeah, maybe matching on postcode to get the latitude and longitude for those points. And then if I go back to we test it with the tube one. So here's one I prepared earlier. So if you go to the data tab again, so we've got all these tube stations. So you see they've got the name and then the latitude and longitude, and then similarly there may be some either some value or some group that you want to add in. So you can go back and then switch on that points layer.
Okay.
And what we may want to say is so we
had
can,
zone, didn't it, as a
yeah, so we could use that
group by zone.
As a color category. So it's slightly tricky to tell. There we are. So you can see they're now grouped into the different zones. So it could be there's some other kind of different types of places that you want to show on the map. And it's just a case of getting the right column in here, and then you can kind of play about with how it's displayed in here.
What's your tool of choice to convert from, if let's say people have a spreadsheet with postcodes in a column, what's your tool of choice to quickly convert or to add in longitudinal and latitudinal values?
So I have a tool that I made called Find That Postcode, which has the option of adding data to a CSV. So if you've got a CSV with postcodes in, you can upload that CSV and it will give you a copy back with the latitude and longitude. There's lots of other tools that do similar things. So I think BatchGeo is one that people have talked about in the past. There's a postcode site called Dougal. I don't know whether they have something similar.
You can definitely batch upload to get ward and local authority. So I imagine
Right.
possibly longitudinal, latitudinal. There are tick boxes you can also tick to get those.
Yeah.
I'll test that.
And yeah, if you're, it could be something where if you're doing it on a regular basis, then you can get the raw kind of postcode files from ONS, and then you could kind of import those into your database and have them as a kind of lookup file as well. So yeah, it's something that's possible to do in Excel with the right, particularly if you're only looking at a limited kind of geographical area.
How responsive has Flourish been? If you've, is there a route through? Do you request or suggest improvements? Are they?
Yeah, they're pretty active on Twitter, so you can tweet them. They definitely like it when you've done good, like interesting things with data. Whether it, yeah, well, I think they have responded when I've had issues and kind of raised them on Flourish. There's also on Twitter. There's also an email address where, yeah, particularly if it's an error, I'm not sure how much support they would give, kind of in a sort of helping you do it, but certainly if you found an error or something's not working right, then
Yeah.
they've been quite responsive. When yeah, we'll do try it out. As I said, it's very so long as you're careful about the data that you upload. I'd really emphasize that don't put personal data up there or sensitive data without really thinking carefully about it. But yeah, there's very little you can do in terms of breaking it. So don't be afraid to kind of play with all the options. There's so many different options for all of them, and I've really kind of just touched the surface of the different types of visualizations that are possible.